Hi there, I'm Lorene. And this year, my parents told me our Christmas Eve gathering would be adults only. I thought it meant no kids at all. But I was wrong. Jake was there. Clara's son. My son Silas wasn't. He was the only one left out. What kind of mother smiles while her grandson is excluded? What kind of sister sends a reminder just to twist the knife? Before we dive in, has your family ever made you feel like a guest in your own bloodline? The call came while I was slicing apples for Silas's lunch. My phone lit up with Mom, and I already knew it wouldn't be good news. There's something about the way her name shows up on my screen, like a warning in polite font. She sounded cheerful, overly so. Hi, sweetheart. Just wanted to touch base about Christmas Eve. We're keeping it small this year. Adults only, you know? Just grown-up conversation, wine, a little breathing room. I paused, the knife still in my hand. Adults only? I asked, unsure if I heard her right. She hummed in agreement. Yes, love. You understand, right? It's just easier. Less chaos. Clara's bringing Jake, of course, but you know he's so well behaved. Doesn't make a sound, that boy. I didn't respond right away. Silas was across the room on the carpet, his knees tucked under him, scribbling out a diagram of water molecules on loose paper he'd taken from my printer. 7 years old, glasses too big for his face, and a mind that never stopped asking how things worked. He's excited about the party, I finally said. Oh, he'll be fine, she replied quickly, like a bandage over a wound. You can drop him off with Curtis and Eileen, right? They adore him. I ended the call politely. I even thanked her. Then I stood in the silence of my kitchen and looked at my son. I watched him flip his paper and redraw his atoms because he didn't like the spacing. I stood there and swallowed something too bitter to name. That night, I couldn't sleep. I didn't tell Silas. I couldn't. I sat by his bed for a while, watching his chest rise and fall, his hands twitching like he was still building molecules in his dreams. I told myself maybe I misheard. Maybe it wasn't what I thought it was. But the next morning, Clara texted me. Hey sis, just a quick reminder. No kids, remember? Wouldn't want to make Mom uncomfortable. A reminder. As if it were something I had agreed to, something I had signed off on. No kids. But Jake would be there. Jake who doesn't make noise. Jake who smiles on cue. Jake, the golden boy with a name stitched into his Christmas stocking and a picture frame on Grandma's mantle. I didn't respond. I just stared at the message and then opened my photos. I scrolled back through Christmases past. Silas on the edge of the group shots, half smiling, half forgotten. Jake front and center, arms wrapped around gifts, around Grandma. I made coffee but didn't drink it. I sat in the dim morning light and listened to the house breathe. No television, no music. Just the hum of the heater and the quiet knowledge that this year would be no different than the last. Except now, they weren't even pretending. Later that day, I wrapped a small gift for Silas in red paper with gold ribbon. He'd asked for a science kit, and I'd saved to buy it. He didn't know it yet, but I planned to give it to him on Christmas morning, just the two of us. I slid the gift under our tiny tree. We wouldn't sit by it on Christmas Eve. There wouldn't be matching pajamas or hot cocoa with cousins, but there would be truth, and space, and the warm weight of choosing dignity over proximity. As I turned off the lamp beside the couch, my phone buzzed again. It was from Mom. Can you bring that caramel cheesecake you used to make? Jake loves it. The banner kept slipping. I taped it up 3 times, and each time it curled forward, as if even the wall didn't want to hold this day. Silas didn't notice. He was too focused on organizing the cupcakes in rows of 3s, then 4s, whispering, divisible by 12, to himself. I smiled. He'd asked for a science-themed birthday party, and I'd done what I could. A cake with an edible periodic table on top, streamers shaped like DNA spirals, little balloons with atom drawings we did together the night before. The dining table was set. The paper plates matched the napkins. The clock ticked softly, a sound that somehow got louder with every passing minute. He asked, "What time are they coming again?" I glanced at the door. "Soon, honey, probably just traffic." He nodded. Believed me. An hour passed, then 2. I lit the candles anyway. He didn't complain. I sang the song by myself. He blew them out in one breath and whispered, "That was easy." We clapped together, just us. He opened his gifts, each one something I had picked with care and wrapped with silence after he fell asleep days ago. He narrated his own excitement. "Oh wow, magnetic field slime. I've always wanted this." I laughed along. I cheered. I kept my back straight and my voice light. What broke me wasn't the empty living room. It was the way he tried to make me feel better. After we cleaned up, I went to the kitchen to pack away the leftovers. He followed behind me, humming a song he made up on the spot, balloon string tied to his wrist, bouncing lightly against his elbow. When he went to bed that night, he kissed my cheek and said, "I had fun today. Thank you, Mommy." After he fell asleep, I sat on the couch in the dark. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call anyone to ask why. Instead, I opened Instagram. Clara had posted a photo an hour into Silas's party, a brunch table, a glowing filter, a caption that said, "Celebrating family and Sunday blessings." Mom was in the photo, smiling beside Clara. Jake was there too, and behind them, tied to one chair, was a single blue balloon. My throat went dry. The timestamp matched exactly the time we were cutting the cake. I stared at the image, then back at our living room. The confetti on the floor, the half-eaten slice of cake still on my plate. They weren't late. They never planned to come. They had other plans. I clicked on the group chat, the one we always used for family updates, holiday photos, invitations that never included questions. My finger hovered over my mother's name. I didn't text. I didn't ask. I didn't explain. I just turned off my phone and deleted the thread. It was a Thursday, cold, gray, one of those Midwest days where the light never really settles. I'd made soup the night before, carrot and ginger, Silas's favorite, and packed some into a small glass container. Mom had texted earlier in the week that she wasn't feeling well. Said her legs were locking up again. Said she hadn't left the house in days. So I figured dropping off soup was the decent thing to do. When I arrived, the house smelled like cinnamon and fabric softener. Funny how those things can feel both warm and suffocating at once. She wasn't downstairs, so I left the soup on the counter and decided to grab a towel from under the sink to wipe off a spot of broth that had dripped. That's when the folder fell. A manila folder, the kind she used to keep coupons and birthday cards. It tumbled from the cabinet above, landed flat on the floor, and splayed open. I bent to pick it up and paused. Inside were printouts, bank statements, receipts, Sephora, Best Buy, Pottery Barn, a hotel spa from 2 weekends ago. But it was one line that made my stomach turn. Samsung 55, $1,298. 3 weeks ago, her voice cracked on the phone while she told me how hard it had been to choose between buying Voltaren cream and keeping the heat on. 3 weeks ago, I transferred $600 without hesitation. I didn't say anything. I didn't call her down. I didn't confront. I simply stacked the papers, slid them neatly back into the folder, and placed it where it had fallen. Then I wiped the counter, folded the towel, smiled at my own reflection in the toaster. On the drive home, I turned off the radio. Just silence, and the thrum of the tires over salted asphalt. My fingers gripped the wheel tighter than they needed to. Not because I was angry, not yet, but because something inside me was finally adjusting. It's a strange thing, watching your trust recalibrate in real time. That evening, after Silas went to bed, my phone rang again. Dad this time. His tone was gentle, like someone trying to talk down a skittish animal. "Your mom didn't want me to call, but her legs locked up again today. She refused to go to the doctor. Didn't even refill her Voltaren. She says it's too expensive, and she doesn't want to burden you." He didn't ask for money. He didn't need to. The ask was already coded into the guilt. I said, "I'll send something tomorrow." And I did. But this time, I saved the transaction confirmation. I opened my laptop, created a new folder on the desktop, labeled it December Financials. Inside it, I started dropping things, receipts, screenshots, dates, not because I planned to use them, but because some part of me was beginning to understand. If they were going to treat me like a ledger, I needed to start keeping my own records. The dinner was forgettable. One of those Sunday night gatherings where everything looked perfect but nothing felt right. Roast chicken, green beans with almonds, Marlene's oversalted mashed potatoes, and silence that wore a polite smile. I stayed mostly quiet, Not out of fear anymore. Out of calculation. Silas sat between me and Clara, coloring the edge of a napkin with a purple marker he kept in his coat pocket. Jake played a game on his iPad. The adults chatted about rising grocery prices, the new Starbucks that opened near the church, and who was moving out of the neighborhood. Then it happened. In the kitchen, while clearing plates, I heard Clara laugh softly. Jake says Silas is intense. Always correcting people. He says it's hard to relax when he's around. Maybe you should help him tone it down a little. Marlene didn't say a word. She just nodded, as if Clara had said something profound. As if Jake, age 8, was a reliable authority on how my son should behave. I didn't say anything. Not there, not then. Later that night, I folded laundry in the living room while Silas brushed his teeth. I matched socks with slow fingers, feeling every syllable of Clara's words replay in my chest. Too intense. I remembered my third-grade teacher writing on my report card. Lorene is bright but takes things too seriously, needs to learn to relax. My mother framed that card like it was a compliment. I tucked the socks into Silas's drawer. I stood at his door and watched him sleep. His brow was furrowed even in dreams, his hand curled in a loose fist like he was still holding a pencil. I closed the door without a sound. Days later, I stopped by Clara's house to drop off a tray of cookies Silas and I had baked. She wasn't home yet, but the sitter let me in. On the kitchen counter was a folder labeled, Evaluation, Jake. I didn't open it, not really. It had already been opened, paper sticking out like someone had been reading and forgot to close it. I caught the first line without meaning to. Subject expresses jealousy and confusion about cousin's intelligence and praise from adults. Another sentence further down. Jake often compares himself to Silas, expresses frustration when Silas receives attention. Family dynamics a source of stress. I didn't touch the paper, just stared at it. So Clara knew. She knew her son was struggling, not because of Silas, but because of what he saw reflected in our family. And instead of working on it, she weaponed. The table was set with Mom's usual green linens, the ones with the stitched holly leaves that only came out in December. Clara had brought her spinach casserole that nobody liked, but everyone complimented. Jake sat beside Mom, right where Silas used to sit before we were moved down the table closer to the kitchen. It was a cousin, I think it was Noah, Aunt Mary's boy, who asked the question. Loud and innocent, like kids are. Hey, how come Silas never calls her grandma like we do? The room froze for half a second, just long enough for silence to answer. Then Mom laughed softly, not awkwardly, not nervously, the kind of chuckle that says, let's move on from this. Clara shrugged. Jake kept chewing. I smiled. My jaw hurt from holding it. My knuckles went pale on the stem of my wine glass. No one looked at me. What they didn't know, or maybe did, was that a few years ago, Silas had asked me, very seriously, do I have to call her grandma, or can I wait to see if she wants that from me? I had said, let's wait and see. He waited. She never did. After dessert, when everyone migrated to the living room, I stayed behind to do dishes. Clara offered to help, and I said no, too fast. I just needed quiet. I didn't cry. I wasn't even angry, not in the usual way. It felt like something permanent had settled. That night, Silas brushed his teeth without being told. He climbed into bed with his book and his flashlight. After I tucked him in, just as I was about to turn off the light, he asked it. The question that finally sliced through what was left. Mom, why does Grandma smile when Jake talks, but not when I do? He wasn't upset, just curious. Like he was figuring out the pattern in a math problem and had reached the part where the numbers stopped making sense. I smoothed his blanket, kissed his forehead, said nothing. After he fell asleep, I sat in the hallway outside his door, not crying, not writing, just breathing and remembering. I remembered sitting at that same age in my room, hearing my mother laugh at something Clara said in the next room. I remembered wondering if my jokes just weren't funny enough, if my voice didn't land the way hers did. I remembered learning to make space for others, by shrinking, but I wasn't going to teach that to Silas. I opened the desk drawer. There it was, a letter I'd started last Christmas, the kind you write but never send. I had written it to Mom, pages and pages. I folded it carefully and wrote across the front in blue ink, "Not for sending, for remembering." Then I put it in the drawer and turned off the light. I hadn't planned on bringing it up. Not that night. It was Clara's birthday. Homemade lasagna in the oven, candles already lit, Mom humming as she arranged her good serving platters. I showed up on time, smiled when I was supposed to, and handed over the wine I knew no one would open. Clara was glowing. Not in a fake way. In the way people glow when they know they've already won. Dinner was normal, which in our family meant every comment had another layer, and every compliment came with a script. Then Mom brought up the new refrigerator. "Finally got it," she said, slicing garlic bread. "We'd been saving for months. So glad Clara told us about the sale." I looked at Clara. She didn't flinch. That's when I said it. "Speaking of saving, has Clara gotten a chance to repay the $2,000 I loaned her back in May?" The air shifted. Clara looked at her plate. Mom chuckled. "Oh, sweetheart, we don't keep tabs on family. You were helping. You don't expect repayment from your own blood, do you?" I set down my fork. "No, I expect clarity. And respect. That money was for Silas's summer therapy sessions. I covered it with extra shifts." She said it was temporary. Silence. Clara folded her napkin slowly, then finally looked up. "Sorry if there was a miscommunication." There wasn't. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just sat there and let it hang. The next day was her birthday dinner. The formal one at the house. Everyone came. There were gifts, champagne, a cake shaped like a handbag. And then, Mom stood with a grin and handed Clara a sleek black box. Inside was a designer handbag. One I recognized. I'd seen it 2 months earlier in a store window. I stood in front of it for a full minute before walking away. Because Silas needed a new coat and my laptop was glitching. Clara gasped, as if she didn't already know. "Oh, Mom, this is too much." And Mom said, loud enough for the whole room to hear, "Clara does so much for us. She deserves something special." My phone buzzed. Transaction alert? Transfer to Marlene Huxley. $1,000. That bag? I had paid for it. I smiled. Calm, cold. Then I reached into my purse, pulled out a flash drive, and handed it to my cousin Rachel. "What's this?" she whispered. "Everything," I said. Receipts, statements, transfers, all the numbers no one had asked for, but everyone needed to see. That night, I sent a message to the family group chat. Transparency folder, for anyone who still believes silence is loyalty. By morning, the group was quiet. Then a ping. My cousin Jason. "Just saw the numbers. You were right." As I was putting on my coat, Clara leaned in and whispered through clenched teeth, "You humiliated Mom." I didn't flinch. She should have felt what it's like to be erased. And I walked out. The house smelled like cinnamon and expectation. It always did this time of year, right before Christmas, when everything was supposed to feel warm and stitched together. But I had learned by now that scent doesn't mean safety. I walked in with Silas, his hand in mine, his sweater too big in the sleeves. No one looked up right away, which felt like its own kind of greeting. "Glad you made it," someone mumbled. We sat in the far corner of the living room, where the lights from the tree blinked just a little too slowly. Clara was already surrounded, Jake on one side, Mom on the other. I didn't expect a parade. I didn't expect anything, but I hadn't prepared for what came next. A cousin, Shannon's oldest, leaned toward me during dinner. His voice was casual, genuinely curious. "Aunt Marlene said you're still not working, right? Thank God for Curtis and Eileen." I blinked, smiled, excused myself. In the hallway mirror, I didn't look angry. I didn't look like someone on the edge of anything. I just looked misplaced. The truth was, I'd been juggling 2 part-time editorial contracts, working at night, submitting pieces that got someone else's byline, raising Silas, mourning Mark, budgeting, sending money, showing up. But to them, I was still the burden, the girl who never quite got it together. I splashed cold water on my face, pressed the towel too hard against my skin. When I walked back toward the kitchen, I heard voices behind the door. Mom's voice. She always thought too highly of herself. Honestly, she was never that talented. Curtis and Eileen spoiled her. That's why she's stuck. That's why she never grew up. My feet didn't move. I stood there, one hand on the doorframe, and listened to the words fall like soft glass. And for the first time, they didn't cut. They confirmed. I didn't need to be angry. I didn't need to explain. I turned around, went to the coat rack, picked up the folder I had brought, the one I had almost left in the car. I walked to the kitchen. They were laughing now, pouring cider. I placed the folder on the counter. The label was clear, typed in black ink. What I paid to belong. No speech, no eye contact, just placement. I walked out of that house with Silas's hand in mine. Outside, the wind had picked up. We got to the car. He buckled himself in, then looked at me. We're not coming back, are we? I looked ahead. Not unless the house changes. The window fogs from the warmth inside, and outside, the snow keeps falling. It's been 3 days since the folder, since the silence, since the moment I walked out of the house that had raised me and realized it never really held me. Eileen's kitchen smells like cinnamon and vanilla. Silas is standing on a stool next to her, covered in flour and grinning like a child who has finally been allowed to be exactly who he is. He doesn't look over his shoulder, doesn't ask if anyone else is coming. There's no tension in the air, no tight smiles, no words with hooks. I'm sitting at the table, peeling an orange slowly, watching the snow fall in slow spirals. The world looks so quiet from here, like it's been waiting for me to stop fighting the wrong battle. This is the first Christmas Eve in years where I don't feel like I'm performing. I don't feel small, or forgotten, or too much. I feel still. Eileen hums to a radio, playing soft jazz. Curtis steps in, dusts off his boots, kisses her cheek, and hands Silas a cookie with a wink. I watch them, and my chest aches, not from hurt, but from something gentler, something I think might be healing. Later, when Eileen is putting dishes away and Silas is curled on the couch with a book, I open a drawer looking for tape. I find an old Christmas card, blank envelope, tucked between a forgotten recipe and a ribbon spool. I open it. I remember writing it last year, addressed to my mother. The handwriting is careful, slanted a bit too far, like I was trying to be steadier than I was. You don't have to love me the way I need, but I'll stop bleeding for it. I close the card, toss it into the fireplace without reading more. The flames catch quickly. Behind me, the house hums with a kind of peace I've never known during the holidays. My phone rings. I don't even have to look. I already know. Mom is glowing on the screen. Silas runs up and hugs my waist. His fingers are sticky with icing. He buries his face into my sweater. The phone keeps ringing. I let it. Then I press the button. Silence. I kneel down to Silas's level and brush a strand of powdered sugar from his cheek. You ready to finish those cookies? He nods. You saved me the dinosaur cutter, right? Always, I smile. And we turn back to the counter together. Some endings don't come with apologies. Some endings are simply quiet choices, like deciding not to answer the phone, or deleting a group thread that never really heard you. If you're watching this and you've ever felt invisible in your own family, I hope this story reminded you that choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. I used to think I had to be accepted to be enough, but enough isn't something you earn, it's something you claim. So let me ask you, have you ever walked away from people you loved just to finally breathe? Would you do it again? If this video touched your heart, leave a 1 in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. And if it didn't, I'd love to hear why. Your voice matters here. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that speak to your soul, because you deserve to be seen.